If you guys could turn around to the camera again and introduce yourselves.
I'm Courtney.
I'm Simon.
I'm Angel.
I'm Adrian.
Alright, thank you. One small African nation, 100 days of carnage, 1 million people dead, and one genocide that was left out of the history books. You may have heard of the Rwandan genocide on the news or in school, but chances are you aren't too familiar with the topic. After studying it for a year in my high school, I've found that it wasn't uncommon for many people to be unfamiliar with this genocide, even though it only happened 25 years ago. In this speech, I will tell you about how the Rwandan genocide began, what happened during it, and the international community's response to it. To begin with, we'll talk about the Belgian colonization of the African country of Rwanda. This started the long-standing hatred between the two main tribes in the country, the Tutsis and the Hutus. The Tutsis were favored by the Belgians because they were considered more beautiful. They had more European features. They were very tall, they had lighter skin, more narrow faces, and they were fairly skinny. They were made to be cattle farmers and caretakers by the Belgians, and this generated more money, which was then passed on to later generations. So the Tutsis have always had more power and influence and control of the country, even though they only made up 14% of the population by the time the genocide began. The Hutus, on the other hand, were considered uglier by the Belgians. They were shorter, they had darker skin and more flat faces, and they were made to be crop farmers, which made them not generate as much money and not have as much power, even though they were the majority tribe and they made up 85% of the population by the time of the genocide. The 1% that I haven't mentioned were the Twa people, and they were forest-dwelling people, so they weren't really affected by the genocide because they weren't in the main city area. And there was no hatred for them by the Hutus because they were never really part of the nation and the central conflict within it. So, it's believed that the beginning of the Rwandan genocide was started by the assassination of President Juvenal Habyarimana. He was a Hutu moderate, and his plane was shot down, according to the African Studies Center. But to this day, no one actually knows who shot down his plane. Of course, the Hutus blamed it on the Tutsi people, so they had a reason to begin the genocide, but many believe that the Hutus actually shot the president down so that they could kind of instigate the hatred for the Tutsi people. They also wanted to eliminate all moderates out of the government, even if it meant that they were getting rid of Hutu people, because they wanted total Hutu radical control overseeing the entire country. Whatever the cause of President Habyarimana's death was, it started a 100-day massacre in the country, and it affected hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children. The World Without Genocide reports that the Interahamwe, which was a group of young, poor men, were recruited by the government to go out and slaughter people, essentially. The United to End Genocide reports that radio propaganda was very common, and it was used kind of like what Hitler did during the Holocaust, to just spew out hatred 24/7 to make it so that the Tutsis didn't seem like they were people. It was very common to refer to them as cockroaches. It just kind of stripped them of their humanity, and it made it easier for people to kill them because they didn't even see them as people anymore. So the Interahamwe went all across the small nation, and they sought out all Tutsi people. You had to carry an ID card on you, and if it signaled that you were Tutsi, or if you didn't have your ID card on you, they essentially killed you. At the end of the genocide, about 1 million people were killed, and 2 million ended up being displaced, or they were refugee peoples. And it's guessed that about 20,000 children were born as a result of rape in the country. So this genocide may have come to an end sooner, even though it was only 100 days, but the international community didn't respond to it at all. If something is labeled as a genocide, then stronger first world nations have to respond to it right away. They have to lend a hand. But the United States, which was under the Clinton administration at the time, was hesitant to label it as a genocide because they knew that if they did, then they would have to send aid. But at the time, Rwanda wasn't considered to be of important interest to the United States, so they didn't want to really get involved at all. The United Nations did end up sending in peacekeeping troops, but they ended up being essentially useless to the tribes and the people there. It wasn't until the Tutsi rebels, who were led by current Rwandan President Paul Kagame, overthrew the Hutu government that the genocide ended. So now that we know more about the Rwandan genocide, how it was caused, what happened during it, and how we as a nation and other first world nations failed, it's our responsibility to educate more people about it. I have a quote to finish from survivor Immaculée Iligaziba. She survived the genocide, all 100 days of it, by hiding in a single bathroom with 6 other women. She says, "Rwanda could be paradise again, but it will take the love of the entire world, and that's as it should be. For what happened at Rwanda happened to us all." Thank you. And if you guys could turn around again.
I'm Courtney.
I'm Simon.
I'm Angel.
I'm Adrian.
Thank you.